The late morning sun struggles to pierce through a veil of pale gray clouds hanging over Buckingham Palace, casting a muted glow across the sprawling courtyard. The air buzzes with anticipation as a royal ceremony unfolds, a grand event marking the palace's annual garden party where dignitaries, foreign ambassadors, and hundreds of guests in their finest attire gather on the manicured lawns. At the edge of the courtyard, near the iconic black and gold gates, Royal Guard Lieutenant James Harrow, a 29-year-old lifeguard of the Household Cavalry, sits tall atop his sleek black charger, a mare named Ebon. James cuts a striking figure at 6'1", his scarlet tunic with silver buttons pristine despite the faint humidity. The white-plumed helmet atop his head swaying slightly with Ebon's restless movements. His deep green eyes scan the crowd with unwavering focus, his gloved hand resting lightly on the hilt of his ceremonial saber, a blade that hasn't tasted combat in decades, or so he thought. The weight of tradition hangs heavy on his shoulders, but James has trained for moments like this, even if he never truly expected one to come. The ceremony is in full swing, the palace band playing a rousing rendition of God Save the King, when a ripple of unease cuts through the crowd like a cold wind. James notices it first, a slight shift in the sea of pastel dresses and tailored suits, a murmur that grows into a wave of gasps near the eastern edge of the lawn. His grip tightens on the reins as Ebon snorts, sensing his tension, her ears flicking toward the disturbance. Then he sees him. A man, mid-30s, wiry and wild-eyed, shoving through the guests with a glint of steel in his hand. A long, jagged knife, its blade catching the faint sunlight as he barrels toward the royal dais where the dignitaries stand. The man's face is a mask of fury, his dark hair matted with sweat, his tattered jacket flapping as he moves with terrifying purpose. "For the cause!" he screams, his voice raw and unhinged, sending a jolt of adrenaline through James's veins. The crowd erupts into chaos, guests stumbling over chairs and flower beds, their screams piercing the air as they scatter like frightened birds. James doesn't hesitate. With a sharp command, he urges Ebon into a gallop, the mare's hooves thundering against the gravel path that borders the lawn, kicking up small clouds of dust. His scarlet tunic flares behind him like a banner, the white plume of his helmet streaming in the wind as he charges toward the intruder. The man is fast, already halfway to the dais, his knife raised high, but James is faster. Ebon's powerful strides close the distance in seconds, her muscles rippling beneath her glossy black coat, her breath hot and steady as they bear down on the threat. The intruder glances over his shoulder, his eyes widening in panic as he sees the towering figure of James and his charger bearing down on him. But it's too late to change course. "Drop the weapon," James bellows, his voice a commanding roar that cuts through the pandemonium. But the man only snarls, tightening his grip on the knife as he lunges toward a dignitary in a navy suit, a visiting ambassador, now frozen in terror on the dais. James leans low over Ebon's neck, his gloved hand drawing his saber with a metallic hiss that sends a shiver through the air. The blade gleams, its polished steel reflecting the gray sky as he swings it downward in a precise arc, aiming not to kill, but to disarm. The flat of the saber strikes the intruder's wrist with a sickening crack, the knife flying from his grasp and skittering across the grass, its blade sinking into the soil like a discarded fang. The man howls in pain, clutching his injured wrist, but his momentum carries him forward, and he crashes into the dais, sending a table of champagne flutes shattering to the ground. James pulls Ebon to a sharp halt, the mare rearing slightly, her hooves pawing the air as she snorts in agitation, her dark eyes wide with the intensity of the moment. "Stand down," James orders again, his saber still raised, the tip pointed at the intruder's chest as the man scrambles to his knees, his face contorted with pain and defiance. The man's resolve crumbles under the weight of James's gaze and the looming presence of Ebon, her breath steaming in the cool air, forming faint wisps that dissipate against the gray sky. He slumps to the ground, his injured wrist cradled against his chest, his wild eyes darting between the saber and the horse as he realizes there's no escape, his shoulders trembling with a mix of pain and defeat. James keeps his saber trained on him, its polished steel glinting faintly in the muted light, his posture unwavering, the scarlet tunic now smudged with dirt from the charge, a faint graze on his knuckles where the intruder's flailing arm had caught him, the sting of the abrasion a sharp reminder of the chaos that unfolded moments ago. The beefeaters move in, their halberds lowered with a metallic clink against the gravel, their stern faces set as they seize the man, dragging him away across the lawn, his incoherent threats echoing in the courtyard. "You'll pay for this. The cause lives." His voice fading into the cacophony of the crowd, swallowed by the murmurs of shock and relief. James sheathes his saber with a slow, deliberate motion, the blade sliding into its scabbard with a soft rasp, his chest heaving as he takes a moment to steady himself, his gloved hand patting Ebon's neck to calm her, feeling the mare's warmth beneath his touch. Ebon snorts softly, her ears flicking back as the tension in the courtyard begins to ebb. The immediate danger averted, though her dark eyes remain alert, mirroring her rider's vigilance. A hush falls over the remaining guests as they realize the threat has passed, their panicked murmurs giving way to whispers of awe that ripple through the crowd like a gentle wave. He stopped him, on horseback. A woman in a lavender dress breathes, clutching her husband's arm, her eyes wide with admiration, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and reverence as she adjusts her tilted hat, its feather quivering in the faint breeze. Nearby, a young boy in a tiny suit, clutching his mother's hand, points at James with a gasp. "Mama, look! He's a hero!" His voice carrying a childlike wonder that cuts through the tension, drawing a few soft smiles from the shaken guests. The ambassador on the dais, still shaken, his navy suit slightly askew from the earlier scramble, nods in James's direction, a silent gesture of gratitude that carries more weight than words, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusts his cufflinks, the glint of a gold watch catching the faint sunlight. A palace staff member in a crisp black uniform who had been ushering dignitaries to safety pauses to wipe sweat from his brow, muttering to a colleague, "I've never seen anything like it. Not in 20 years here." His voice a mix of disbelief and respect as he glances at James with newfound admiration. James straightens in his saddle, his plumed helmet slightly askew but his dignity intact, the scarlet tunic a vivid symbol of his unyielding duty, its silver buttons catching the pale light as he adjusts his posture, his shoulders squared with pride. He guides Ebon back to his post near the gates, the mare's hooves crunching softly against the gravel path, her steady gait a contrast to the chaos that still lingers in the air. Overturned chairs, scattered flowers, and a single silk scarf caught on a rosebush, fluttering like a surrender flag. James's green eyes scan the crowd once more, ever vigilant, taking in the faces of the guests as they begin to regroup, their voices now a low hum of recounting the event, some pointing at the spot where the intruder fell. A faint breeze carries the scent of crushed grass and spilled champagne, a reminder of the ceremony's abrupt end, as the palace staff work to restore order amidst the chaos, their hurried steps and whispered instructions barely audible over the distant squawk of a raven perched on the palace balcony. The ceremony may have been shattered, but James Harrow, a lifeguard of the household cavalry, has proven that even in the face of an ambush, a royal guard on horseback stands as an unbreakable shield for the crown, his name already being whispered among the staff as a legend in the making.